So we have only just entered 2025 and there has already been a ton of AFL trade news. Again, if the 2024 trade period wasn't crazy enough, with it for the first time ever really seeming like it was a American sport type trade period where a ton of players, of course, are moving teams, and players aren't afraid to, again, leave a team and leave their home to go to an interstate team to try and chase success. Again, we see it a ton of times in the NBA, the NFL, where some players may be playing for their local team, but they'll go and play for a contending team if they offer them the right contract and the right scenario. Again, we saw it with so many situations like Daniel Rowell, who has, if he hasn't lived in Northern Territory, he's always pretty much lived in Melbourne. And again, a real big, like, Richmond legend at this rate, some would even call him. And then he goes to Gold Coast, of course, for success, probably a better deal, but again, most importantly, to try and compete now for another premiership or two, hopefully for them in the future. So this is how the AFL seems to be trending. It was, I feel like, the first off season we've seen where a ton of players were not just leaving to go back to their, home city, but a ton of players were actually leaving to chase success. And it looks like 2025 could be even bigger than that, with us only just being in January or February, probably by the time this video comes out. And we've already heard a ton of news, which we're going to be talking about all of that and more in today's video. Again, before we do get into all the latest 2025 AFL trade news, there's still a decent amount of you guys who watch these videos who are not yet subscribed to the channel. So if you could do me a massive favor and leave a like on this video to let me know you guys enjoyed it. Go subscribe to this channel as well, again, if you haven't already, for all latest sports content and news. And I guess without further ado, let's just get straight into all the 2025 AFL trade news that we've already heard. So when I first heard this news that came out recently, I had to legitimately sit there for a couple minutes like I was the thinker, kind of just rubbing my chin to kind of think about, well, what does this actually mean? Is this a good move if this does happen? And the more and more I thought about it, the more and more I realized that Matt Rowell potentially going to the Geelong Football Club is actually low-key a match made in heaven, and is actually a really, really good move. For those of you who have, like, legitimately no idea what I'm talking about, there was a recent report that said that Geelong is targeting Matt Rowell as the club's latest trade coup. Rowell met with Chris Scott and Andrew Mackey in a private apartment in Melbourne's Bayside. Again, maybe they were just filming an episode of Casting Couch, or maybe they were legitimately actually talking about getting Matt Rowell to the team in 2025. Again, I've spoken about it on the channel before. It looks like Matt Rowell is one of the strongest chances to leave in the upcoming free agency out of most players that are in it. Again, he's in a really weird situation because for the first time in the history of the Gold Coast Suns Football Club, they can actually, like, low-key afford to lose a free agent, and it's not like World War III. It's not like some terrible thing that's going to happen to their team. Again, for generations, at least it's felt like it, the Gold Coast Suns have had elite players come in and elite players go out heading into their prime. Again, Tom Lynch, Dion Prestia, Gary Ablett was probably a bit past his prime, obviously, but that's another one. Stephen May, of course. So many legends of the Gold Coast Suns Football Club, or players who were supposed to be legends of the Gold Coast Football Clubs who became legends elsewhere, have left their club over the years. But in the last 5 or so years, the Gold Coast Suns have done a really good job at being able to keep their players, but not only keeping them, but bringing in talent from other teams. Like, of course, we just recently saw them bring in Daniel Rowell and John Noble. Of course, they still lost a couple players, don't get me wrong, like Lukosius, but Lukosius was affordable to lose, and in fact, I think Gold Coast wanted to move on from him. I'm not saying that Gold Coast want to move on from Matt Rowell, But I do believe that sometimes their midfield is very one-dimensional, and they have a lot of players in that midfield who just play way too similar. Of course, Damien Hardwick has tried to correct this by now selecting Leo Lombard, bringing in players like Jake Rogers, even Bailey Humphries going through there and playing a little bit of a different role amongst a ton of other different players on their team. But it still feels like it is very one-dimensional, and I think with them looking to draft Zeke Euland as a top 3 pick in the 2025 draft as a academy selected player, they now have room to lose a guy, and it doesn't mean that they have to overpay to keep a guy like Matt Rowell, like they've had to do with so many previous guys before, like even Jack Lukosius, who they overpaid to keep. Matt Rowell, as we speak, is currently meeting with like a ton of different Victorian teams. There's been rumours and reports that he has met with Hawthorn, who I think would be a good move. There has been rumours and reports that he's met with Collingwood, which I think would be an elite move. If you think about it, Collingwood's 2 biggest needs are a key forward and a number 1 contested clearance inside midfielder to, of course, help out Nick Dacos, Jordan De Goey, and the probably declining Tom Mitchell is the best way to say it. And now a team like Geelong, whose biggest weakness over the last couple of years has been their inside midfield, but they've slowly improved it, like adding in Bailey Smith and Max Holmes to the midfield as well. They're still looking for that final inside player, and I genuinely believe Matt Rowell would not only be hectic and crazy for the team, but imagine just the rotations of midfield that they could have in a couple of years, and most of them are all different players. You've got Bailey Smith in there, an inside midfield bull who can actually play, of course, on the outside, elite runner, elite 2-way runner. You'll have Matt Rowell in there if they do get him, an elite inside clearance contested midfielder. Max Holmes, again, another guy who's an elite 2-way runner who can play halfback, he can play wing, just moves all over the ground. Patrick Dangerfield, you can rest him forward. Jai Clark, again, he's eventually developing into being a really good ball user, a very good skillful player who will be in the team probably over the next couple years. Jack Bowes, a guy who's got a really good defensive game to his arsenal, and you can put him in the midfield. He can do a lockdown job on a guy. You got Cam Guthrie and Mitch Duncan, who are the inside midfielders who can move to the wings as well. There's so many flexibility on this Geelong midfield team. It's absolutely crazy, but I do still think maybe they are looking for that really big inside clearance player. Again, I think they think that Bailey Smith can do it, but Bailey Smith has also showed he can be a really good wingman, a really good 2-way player, and they're probably looking for that better, really natural inside clearance player, and I think Matt Rowell is that guy, and it'd be a great move for them. Again, I think that the Gold Coast Suns, if I am right, I think they can match if Matt Rowell wants to leave though, which means they would have to do a trade, and I'm not too sure how that would go. If you're Geelong, you are really trying to walk him in, but if the Gold Coast Suns finished again, if they finish top 8, which I think a lot of us think they will, and of course I predicted them to, that means the pick they would get back from Matt Rowell would probably only be 12 or 13, depending where they finish, and that's probably not enough to what they want. Again, they're probably going to be after like a top 8 pick, and is Matt Rowell worth that or not? People will argue, and I'll let you guys argue about that in the comment section down below, but they might just be a pain in the ass to try and match it and get some extra picks out of the Geelong Football Club. So that will be an interesting one that the Cats will, of course, have to go and work out. But I do think this is a great move, and if they can get him into the team, it only strengthens their team. And I mean, Matt Rowell probably makes them nearly the best team in the game, if they're not already going to be in 2025, sorry. They were that close off making a grand final, and they would have 100% beaten Sydney that day. They've added Bailey Smith. Could that be the guy that pushes them over the edge? Or will it have to be another guy like Matt Rowell? Again, I think he'd be perfect for them. I think it makes sense, for Gold Coast with all these midfielders they're bringing in. Zeke Euland on the way, a couple more guys after that. They don't want to overpay for a guy like that, and I think that maybe they could afford to lose him. So it'll be interesting to see how this, of course, all does go and more. We're back again, boys and girls, with another AFL video here today. The last video myself and Ty did was our 2024 AFL ladder prediction.
Yeah, bit of controversy in that one.
There was a bit of controversy. You started a war in the comment section. Is there anything you want to say to the people who are watching who might have been offended by anything you said at all?
Watching it back, I think Collingwood do make the 8 next year. Geelong make the 8.
Collingwood fans were just sending this guy death threats. But in today's video, we are going to be doing a very early prediction on 2025 AFL free agents. Now, do you even know who the free agents are?
Andrew Brayshaw.
He is one.
He is one.
All right, maybe let's not spoil the video. All right, we'll start off with an easy one. And that is Brendan Starcevich. Where do you think he's going to go?
How's that easy?
Because I think it's pretty obvious he's going to re-sign with the Lions, right?
Actually, yeah. No, that is a shout.
All right. Now, another easy one, I think. Andrew Brayshaw.
Okay, so I am quite knowledgeable on this topic. He's either going to the Saints, which won't happen. He'll re-sign at Freo.
I don't see him going anywhere else. I think they're the two really easy ones to predict. We'll start off, because you're a Saints fan, we'll start off with LDU. Where does Luke Davies-Uniacke go in 2025?
I think he might be the first one on this list to move teams. I think he's similar to Brayshaw. He's either Saints or re-signing. I would have said this time last year.
More quiet than me.
Yeah.
Put the mic
just right here. This time last year, I would have said that he's coming to the Saints. I'm yelling. I think he re-signs.
Really?
Yeah, I do.
So the St Kilda fan thinks that LDU re-signs. Yeah. I actually think he leaves North Melbourne. And I'll tell you why. This is not me saying that I think LDU is going to leave North Melbourne because North Melbourne is suck or anything like that. I think LDU is not only going to leave North Melbourne just because I think the money is going to be absolutely insane, but I think he's going to be offered a role that is quite substantial in a team like either Collingwood or St Kilda.
If you think he's going to leave, what team does he go to?
So I think St Kilda are a big one.
Okay.
I think if you were to offer him 7 years, St Kilda just need that designated number one midfielder. They've got a good forward line. They're building a good back line. The midfield just needs to be filled out. I think they're a team that will offer him long-term money. I think Collingwood will be the interesting one. If Collingwood make the 8 this year, let's just say they do make it, they finish 7th or 8th, and the biggest thing they need is an inside midfielder, which we know that's what I think the biggest thing they need is, other than maybe a key forward. You're telling me you wouldn't maybe join the Pies, leave freaking North Melbourne?
Maybe. I think it depends where his head's at, I guess. I think moving to Collingwood is in the next year or two, you're a flag chance, like a genuine flag chance.
Yeah.
Saints is kind of like a more long-term...
Yeah, long-term
like
thing. So you're locking in North Melbourne, I'm locking in leaving.
Yeah.
I also think they traded away their first-round pick to Richmond, knowing they're going to get a top 5 priority back for LDU. That's my theory as well. Yeah, did you think about that one? All right, we also got Sam Draper. From Adelaide. Oh, from Adelaide. No, that's the team I think he's going to go to. Spoilers.
It's a tough one. I don't know. I haven't heard too much about it. Like, I've just heard the rumours of going to Adelaide and whatnot. But I know Bombers have a good young ruckman that hasn't played much in Nick Bryan. Yep. He definitely needs to play more. So,
but Draper, considering as well, I think Adelaide are going to probably move on from O'Brien. Okay. Eventually, I mean, they dropped him once or twice 2024. I don't think they want O'Brien to be their long-term guy. Is Draper much better than Riley O'Brien?
Yeah.
He is. Could they turn him as well into being a much better player who will make a substantial difference?
I think at the moment he's a better player. And he has more upside, more potential.
Long-term.
Still young.
Yeah. I think the writing's on the wall for him to go to Adelaide. Matt Rowell.
Oh, wow. So I think there's rumours of him going to Collingwood.
There's Collingwood, Hawthorn, and some low-key ones, not by big sources, but some have mentioned Richmond.
Okay.
Yeah, because they have
Maybe,
like
I
$8
mean,
million in
yeah,
cap space.
That's fair. I mean, I think personally he'll stay. I
Yeah.
think Gold Coast are building something nice. He sees
They're
it.
notorious for overpaying players who get
Yeah,
Victorian
that's
interest.
true. Yes, I think he stays with his best mate, Noah Anderson.
Yeah.
That's their future midfield for a while with other young
He's
players
kind of in a similar spot to LDU, I feel like, as well. Those Victorian teams who come knocking, who are looking for that new number one midfielder to come into the team. I mean, if he goes to Richmond, he's the number one guy. He wouldn't be the number one guy on Hawthorn.
Really?
I don't think.
Who do you think's number one? Newcomb?
Is Newcomb better than?
Nah.
Maybe
Rowell.
Rowell is number one on
Yeah.
Hawthorn.
I reckon
Jeez,
he is.
Hawthorn fans might be pissed at that though, because all their midfielders are so good. It's hard to pick.
See, I reckon their midfield isn't that great.
I think it is.
The midfield as a unit is good, but they have
Yeah.
no star players. If you look at it, they have Newcomb.
Some would argue Newcomb's a star player.
I'd say he's.
You're gonna get some hate for that.
I know. I'd say he's A minus, A player.
Yeah.
He's not like an A plus, but
At Collingwood, he'd also be their number one. He wouldn't be their best midfielder, but he'd be their number one midfielder, because Dacos would play more of an outside role that I
Yeah.
think he
Yeah,
is
that's fair.
so much better at doing than. I mean, when you have Nick Dacos on your team, you don't want Nick Dacos to be the guy that goes in and gets the contested possession, gets the hard clearance. You want a guy like Matt Rowell, who was literally built and born to do that, to
Yeah.
go in and do that.
what about DeGoey?
No, well, Tom Mitchell
You
was
reckon?
their guy in the flag year,
Yeah.
and DeGoey as well was also their other guy, and then Dacos would hang about a bit more on the outside. It's the same as in Port Adelaide, you'd have a guy like Wines or Horn Francis going in for Butters to sit on the outside. That's what you want if you're Collingwood. That's why they'd be going after Matt Rowell. I think he'll probably re-sign because they're notorious for re-signing
Yeah,
players
I reckon he
and
re-signs.
overpaying for them.
Yeah.
The other one is Tom de Koning from Carlton. And there's obviously been, very early onwards, extreme amount of significant interest from Richmond, who have
Tigers, is it?
have
Okay.
so much salary cap. They need a ruckman for the future. Could probably make him the highest paid ruckman in the game.
I think he definitely has the potential of being the best ruckman in the game.
Well, he should be a top 5 this year.
I'd say he was top 5 last year.
Yeah, well, there you go.
But
There you go.
He was obviously had injuries and stuff.
Mm.
But I think as long as he stays injury free, that's the main thing.
Yeah.
He'll be top 5 quite easily. I
Yeah.
think maybe even top 3.
Well, Carlton right now probably have the tightest salary cap in the AFL. I mean, it was the reason they lost out on Dan Houston in the end, is
true.
their salary cap was just, they couldn't fit him in. If Dan Houston was getting offered $900K a year from Collingwood and they couldn't match that, what happens when De Koning gets offered that same amount from Richmond, who will offer him a lot of money?
Yeah.
I just think it makes sense. I think De Koning would come in. Not only would he play great with the Tigers, be their future ruckman for the next 6 or 7 years, but in the short term, I think he can play with Nank. I think they could also play together. And Richmond is going to need to bring in a player or two because they're going to have so much salary cap. They're going to land a big fish.
Yeah, you have to.
I don't know who it's going to be,
Yeah.
but they're going to land someone. And I think De Koning makes a ton of sense.
It does make sense. I think you guys don't, without knowing your list fully,
Yeah.
I don't think you have any young ruckmen coming through.
No,
apart from
none.
Samson Ryan.
Yeah,
who
no,
is he?
you might as well
we
be
won't
our
get
young
started.
ruckman coming through.
Yeah, we won't get started on that one. But I think, yeah, it makes sense. He'll be your main ruckman for the next 10 years.
Yeah.
Alongside Nake for.
But everyone
until he
always says, I've heard people say, why would De Koning leave Carlton to go to a rebuilding team, considering he's just spent so much time rebuilding with Carlton? Right, the argument to that is he really didn't. He joined the later part of the rebuild. He hasn't been there since 15, 16, like Patrick Cripps.
Yeah.
That's a bit of a different scenario. Not just that, the money Richmond are going to offer, the security and I think future that Richmond are going to offer as well. You tell him, look, we had 8 draft picks last year, 7 of them basically being first round. We'll have another 2 or 3 probably this year. We'll bring in you, another free agent or 2.
Yeah.
You wouldn't think finals would be an 8-year rebuild like
No.
Carlton's was. You'd think it'd be way quicker than that.
I think, yeah, he wouldn't be, his thought wouldn't be like going to Tigers for a massive rebuild.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, that's a good young list with all your draft picks
already.
and stuff.
Yep.
In the next, let's give it like 5 years and you'll be
Exactly
kind of
right.
around that finals mark again. So
The last player I'll ask you about, who's not a free agent, but does he re-sign or does he go? This might be the controversial one. What is Harley Reed doing?
I think he goes.
Whoa.
I think he goes. I reckon
To
he goes
St Kilda.
to Saints. It's a lot. I think Bombers land him. Which he wants to play for a big club. It's either Tigers
Tigers or
chance
Bombers,
as well.
yeah.
Carlton aren't really a
No,
chance.
impossible.
Can't afford him.
Collingwood, impossible.
Collingwood, I don't.
None of the other Victorian teams would interest him. It'd be out of Essendon or Richmond.
Yeah.
I don't think it happens this year. I think there'll be interest in 2026. Richmond will offer him freaking 20 million, 10 years. Essendon will do the same thing. I think West Coast will offer him the same thing, and I think he'll stay at West Coast because everyone I've spoken to about Perth loves Perth.
Yeah.
There's no one that, like, majority of the time, I feel like players have been more likely to leave a Queensland club way more than like a Perth club.
Yeah.
Like, I think when people go to Perth, they usually like it. I think Harley Reid will re-sign. I don't think Richmond will be able to make a compelling case. I really don't think Essendon will be able to make a compelling case.
Yeah. I know he's best mates with Nate Caddy, which helps. I can see him leaving.
So even though Harley Reid is contracted for one more year, again, after 2025, I think he is the player of focus, mainly for the West Coast Eagles as we enter this season, because everyone wants to know, is he going to re-sign with the team? Is he going to put it off for another year? Is he going to explore his options? Look at already going back to Victoria. All of the above, right? Again, in my opinion, I think he's going to re-sign, but it hasn't stopped people from talking. But in saying that, this might actually not be the case where Harley Reid is the number one guy on West Coast talked about for the 2025 AFL off-season, because we've got a random player who's just spawned out of nowhere in Oscar Allen. And when I say random player, I don't mean by him being a random player that he's bad or anything like that. In fact, he's legitimately a really good player. But random player is in, I would think he's the last player to ever probably leave the West Coast Eagles. But here we are with news saying that Brisbane is making plans for life after Joe Danaher, with the Lions eyeing West Coast free agent Oscar Allen. The Lions are understood to have already spoken with Allen as he enters his free agency season. Now, this is nuts. This is more crazy than the time that KFC decided to replace the 3 wicked wings in the Zinger box with 2 hot and spicy chicken. It's just really bizarre, and it has ultimately come out of nowhere. And the reason I think I'm super shocked by this is because I can remember a time where the Richmond Football Club were reportedly all over Oscar Allen in the 2017 AFL draft. Again, Oscar Allen, for the most part, was predicted to go top 15, and some drafts even had him going top 10. And as we know, I believe the Richmond Football Club, I think, had picked 17 and 20 that year, as well as 25. But 17 and 20 were the important ones, and a lot of people said they needed a key forward, and that was going to be their goal, to add one to help Jack Rowell as the seasons go on. And obviously, it was just a given, go with the best key forward available, who you apparently have a lot of interest in, Oscar Allen. And of course, it didn't happen. It was a bizarre situation. Oscar Allen continued to fall down the draft board, even past those Richmond picks, all the way to pick 21, where he conveniently went to the West Coast Eagles, of course, the team he apparently grew up supporting, and obviously the Perth team where he is from. Of course, this raised a lot of suspicions, and it was eventually leaked by insiders that apparently Oscar Allen and his management had told teams like Richmond and other Victorian teams and other, teams outside of Victoria that Oscar Allen wanted to stay in Western Australia and wanted to stay in Perth. So obviously it was very controversial at the time because a player pretty much forced teams to not draft him and basically got his way in going to the Eagles. It was a very weird situation. Again, I guess at the time he just wasn't ready to move. He didn't want to move. Whatever it might have been. There might have been some real big personal stuff going on. Again, it was still a really weird situation. One that definitely pissed me off as a Richmond fan when that happened and those leaks, of course, and rumours, of course, got spread out. But it's different now. He's a 25-year-old guy turning 26 who, for the most part, has played on a bad team in his career that could be, I guess, exploring to move if the right offer was made. Now, in my opinion, I don't see him moving. If I'm still going back on the fact that, look, maybe his opinion might have changed from 7 to 8 years ago, but he probably still won't want to leave Perth. So also the fact is he's the captain of the West Coast Football Club, the club where his home legitimately is, who's probably going to get a massive contract by the Eagles, a team that is really building something special there. I just can't see him leaving, but just for the chance that he does, which is still there because Brisbane could be offering him a major deal. I mean, yeah, Brisbane would be awesome to go to. They are literally the premiership team. They have absolutely everything now but a key forward. You would fit in so seamlessly there. You would get paid a crap ton. I think Danaher was on slightly over $1 million a year. Again, I think because Brisbane are contending and we've seen other players on contending teams before take pay cuts, I wouldn't be surprised if a couple of the Lions players took even pay cuts to try and get Oscar Allen to the team. Again, Oscar Allen could be making a decision here where it's like, I could stay at the Eagles maybe for, 7 years, $7 million or something like that, right? Or I could go to the Lions maybe on 7 years, $900K, a little bit less, but I don't have the pressures of being the captain, I guess. Even though I don't know why being the captain would be a bad thing, but you know what? It's just for this video. You would get to play in a team which is literally a chance for the premiership basically every year, and with the young players they're bringing in, probably will be for the next how many years. And legitimately all they need is a key forward. You are the missing piece. I mean, yeah, he'll consider it. He clearly has. He's met with their management. And this is interesting. This is a smart player to go for to replace Danaher. I think he actually fits really well into their team as a player who can move up the ground like Danaher can. He can crash the packs like Danaher can. He can take a great mark like Danaher can. Again, I think this is going to be really interesting because we know that Oscar Allen has had injuries. He hasn't exactly had the best midfield kicking to him for the last couple years. He's actually got, again, he's injury free this year. He's got some really good midfielders now in players like Harley Reed, Liam Baker, hopefully Elliot Yeo has another healthy season, etc, etc. He's got some really good players kicking to him now. I wouldn't be surprised if he has like a near 50 goal year this year and does really, really well and gets back to his absolute best, which means, again, a player kicking 50 goals, that's going to warrant 900 to $1 million probably per season, not only from West Coast, but if Brisbane are now joining this bidding war, other teams are going to be like, holy crap, that means he's open to leaving. We're going to throw our, we're going to throw our hats in the ring. We're going to absolutely try and give it our all to get Oscar Allen. And then all of a sudden, you've got a massive bidding war to try and get him to the team. So again, I think he will stay. And it is interesting though, because West Coast, look, losing your captain would be terrible, and it would be probably an L at the end of the day, and considering he's your best key forward by a long shot, it would suck. But at the end of the day, you would be getting a first round compensation in return, and if they finish second last, let's just say they finish 17th, that means they will be given the pick of their ladder where they will have pick 2 and 3. So that is a lot when you think about it. And if you can get pick 2 for Oscar Allen, you do really, really consider that. So it could be a massive W for them, especially if they take a really good play with that pick 2, and a massive W for Brisbane. Again, if they can get their key forward in, if they can't win a flag this year and the key forward is clearly the problem, I wouldn't be surprised if even that offer continues to climb and they're like to Lachie Neale, mate, we'll owe you forever, we'll get you another premiership or 2, just take a pay cut here, say the same thing to a bunch of other players, and then that gets Oscar Allen to the team. I mean, yeah, this is something to keep an eye on. As I said, I think he will stay, but West Coast will be like, well, yeah, we can get pick 2 for him here as compensation. That is a hell of a lot. And yeah, you would think if you can get a really good, young key forward at like 3, a really elite midfielder at 2, it is an interesting situation. So I'm interested to see how this, of course, all does go unfold. Please don't forget to make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Comment your thoughts and opinions down below. Do you guys think the West Coast Eagles will re-sign Oscar Allen? Do you guys think the Brisbane Lions are a chance to sign him? Again, I'd very much like to know all your thoughts and opinions down below. Subscribe to my gaming channel, which will also be getting linked down below as well. And I guess I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.